When Vanessa Cooper stood up during our anniversary dinner, champagne flute in hand, and announced she was carrying my husband's child, I didn't throw water in her face or cause a scene. Instead, I smiled, finished my crème brûlée, and began plotting how I would take control of Summit Technologies, the company Ethan had built from nothing, the company he loved more than anything in this world, including me. By the time the waiter brought our check, I already knew exactly how I would dismantle my husband's world and rebuild it with me at the helm. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. When Vanessa stood up during our anniversary dinner, champagne flute in hand, and announced she was carrying my husband's child, I didn't throw water in her face or cause a scene. Instead, I smiled, finished my crème brûlée, and began plotting how I would take control of Summit Innovations, the company Ethan had built from nothing, the company he loved more than anything in this world, including me. By the time the waiter brought our check, I already knew exactly how I would dismantle Ethan's world and rebuild it with me at the helm. I met Ethan Carter 15 years ago at a tech startup conference in San Francisco. I was there representing my investment firm, scouting promising ventures to fund. He was passionate, brilliant, and utterly captivating. Within 3 hours, I was convinced, not only to invest personally in his vision to revolutionize healthcare software but also to say yes to dinner. Within a year, we were married. I had redirected my financial expertise to help him secure funding that would grow Summit Innovations into a $300 million powerhouse. That night at Denver's most exclusive restaurant was meant to be our 12th anniversary celebration. Ethan insisted on inviting his executive team, something about sharing our joy with the Summit family. I should have recognized the red flag when he mentioned that Vanessa, his new executive assistant, would be joining us. Vanessa had been with the company just 10 months but already seemed indispensable to Ethan, or so he claimed. The table was elegant, white linens, crystal glasses, soft lighting that made everyone look their best. I wore the sapphire earrings Ethan had given me on our 5th anniversary, though he didn't seem to notice. His attention drifted repeatedly to Vanessa, who sat 3 seats away in a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Throughout the appetizers and main course, I maintained the perfect corporate wife smile, chatting about the latest charity gala with Christopher Barnes's wife, asking about vacations and kids, while noticing Ethan's hand occasionally disappearing beneath the table, Vanessa's cheeks flushing whenever he leaned in close to whisper. I was taking a delicate bite of my dessert when Vanessa stood, her blonde hair catching the light, her slim figure showing no signs yet of the news she was about to share. "I'd like to make a toast," she said, voice sweet but suddenly sounding rehearsed. "To new beginnings and family." The table raised glasses, murmuring politely. "We're excited to share that we're expecting a little one in about 7 months," Vanessa continued, eyes fixed on Ethan rather than me. "We hadn't planned to announce it tonight, but what better occasion than surrounded by our closest friends?" The silence was deafening. Every eye turned to me, waiting for an explosion, tears, anything. But 15 years navigating cutthroat tech investments had taught me never to reveal my hand when blindsided. I set my dessert spoon down carefully. "How lovely," I said, voice steady. "Congratulations." Ethan looked stunned at my composure. He had expected drama, outrage, perhaps even hoped for it to cast me as the unstable, jealous wife. Instead, I turned to Vanessa with a placid smile. 7 months, you said? That makes you about 8 weeks along. You should be careful with champagne toasts then. Vanessa's smile faltered as she lowered her still full glass. The dinner ended shortly after, with awkward goodbyes and averted gazes. Ethan and I rode home in separate cars, him claiming urgent office work, me knowing exactly what he was handling. At home, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a real drink, not the single glass of wine I'd nursed all evening. Sitting on our Italian leather sofa, I opened my laptop and began my research. Most women in my position might have called a divorce attorney immediately, but I knew something they didn't. Summit Innovations was 3 months from a critical juncture. The board was considering an IPO that could value the company at $500 million. Ethan had been the face of the company since the start, but I was its financial backbone in ways he never publicly acknowledged. I pulled up the company bylaws I had helped draft years ago, back when Summit was just 3 people working out of a garage. In Section 7, Paragraph 3 was the clause Margaret Reynolds had insisted upon, the moral conduct provision. Any executive found engaging in behavior damaging to the company's reputation could be removed by a 2/3 board vote. Margaret had been COO during Summit's early days, a brilliant woman in her 60s who survived 3 tech booms and busts. She retired 2 years ago but maintained her board position. She had always seen through Ethan's charm to the ambition beneath, and took me aside at her retirement party. "Watch him, Vanessa," she said, eyes sharp despite the champagne. "Men like Ethan think success makes them untouchable. Keep copies of everything." I'd nodded politely then, thinking she was being dramatic. Now I was grateful for her foresight. I reached for my phone and called Daniel Wong, one of Denver's top corporate attorneys and a longtime friend since business school. "Daniel, it's Vanessa Mitchell. I know it's late, but I need your legal expertise. Can you meet me for breakfast tomorrow? It's urgent." Daniel didn't ask questions. "The Summit, 8 a.m., he said. "And Vanessa, this stays between us." After hanging up, I methodically collected what I needed: the spare key to Ethan's office, passwords to our shared accounts, and investment paperwork showing my initial contributions to Summit's funds from my personal portfolio. Those contributions had never been properly documented, erased by Ethan's insistence that my investment was through him, as his wife, to protect us both. What that really did was erase me from the founding documents, casting me as merely a supportive wife rather than a key early investor. In Ethan's office, I found what I was looking for: the original business plan with my handwritten notes in the margins, financial projections I created that convinced the first major investors, and most importantly, emails Ethan had forwarded to our home account, conversations with early partners acknowledging my role. By 2 a.m., I had compiled enough to make my case, but I needed more. I needed irrefutable evidence that Ethan's affair with Vanessa wasn't just personal betrayal but a liability to the company. I fell asleep on the couch, laptop still open. I woke to the sound of the front door. Ethan entered, clothes wrinkled, expression a carefully composed mask of remorse. "Vanessa, we need to talk," he began. I closed my laptop. "Yes, we do. But not now. I have an early breakfast meeting." "A meeting? After last night? Who could be more important than protecting what's mine right now?" I said, watching the flicker of fear cross his face. The meeting was with Daniel Wong. "What's important isn't our marriage," I told Ethan. "It's making sure I protect what I earned." He tried to downplay the situation. "Vanessa, this isn't Vanessa's fault. She made a mistake announcing that way. We were going to tell you privately. Respectfully. You know I still care about you deeply." "Respect would have been not sleeping with your assistant," I replied. "Care would have been not getting her pregnant." I stood. "We can discuss your fascinating definition of these terms another time. I need to shower." I walked past him, calm and collected, as his world began to unravel. That moment I realized the power had already shifted. Ethan was used to controlling every situation, but my refusal to react as expected threw him off balance. Daniel was waiting when I arrived at the Summit. A different table, same impeccable service. He looked me over. "You look terrible," he said, pushing a large black coffee toward me. "Ethan's assistant announced she's pregnant with his child at our anniversary dinner last night," I said, taking a grateful sip. "I think I'm entitled to dark circles." Daniel's eyes hardened, ready to strategize. Daniel leaned forward, ready to hear every detail. "Tell me everything, Vanessa. Don't leave out anything you think isn't relevant. I'll decide what matters legally." Between bites of barely touched breakfast, I laid out the situation. The affair, the pregnancy announcement, and most importantly, how my contributions to Summit Innovations had been systematically minimized in official records. "I don't just want a divorce settlement, Daniel," I said firmly. "I want what I earned. I helped build Summit from nothing. My investment, my financial strategy, my connections. The company wouldn't exist without me. Daniel nodded slowly. This isn't just about the affair then. The affair is my leverage, I replied. What I really want is recognition. If Ethan won't give it willingly, I'll take it. He studied me for a moment. You're talking about a corporate takeover, not just a divorce. I'm talking about justice. I pulled out the folder I'd compiled overnight. Here's what I have so far. I need your help gathering the rest. Daniel flipped through the documents, clearly impressed. This is a good start, but to get the board to remove Ethan using the moral conduct clause, we need to prove the affair is a genuine threat to company interests, not just poor judgment. He paused. Vanessa has access to all Ethan's emails, calendar, files. She's involved in IPO discussions and strategic planning. She's not just any employee. Her position means the relationship is a massive breach of corporate governance. Good angle, I said. Daniel made notes. We also need to look for misuse of company resources, travel expenses, gifts, anything suggesting company funds facilitated the affair. Check the Vale property records, the corporate retreat cabin. Ethan's taken the executive team there twice a year, but he's had several solo trips with Vanessa. I'm willing to bet those trips weren't documented properly. How do you know that? Margaret Reynolds mentioned it at our last charity committee meeting. She found it odd Vanessa was needed for what was supposed to be Ethan's personal creative time. Daniel smiled slightly. Speaking of Margaret, we'll need her support on the board. She's been skeptical of Ethan's management style, too focused on public image, not enough on sustainable growth. I'm having lunch with her tomorrow, I confirmed. Perfect. Meanwhile, I'll start the formal divorce filing and request full discovery of all financial records. That'll give us legitimate access to company documents that might otherwise be hard to get. How long? To build a bulletproof case, 3 to 4 weeks. But Vanessa, you'll need to maintain appearances during that time. If Ethan suspects what you're planning, he'll cover his tracks, cut off your access. I nodded, already calculating how to play the shell-shocked but coping wife. Ethan expected emotional collapse, eventual forgiveness. He thinks I'm too dependent on our lifestyle to risk losing it all. That's his first mistake. Daniel signaled for the check. Underestimating you. When I returned home, Ethan was waiting, his contrite expression carefully arranged. I've been thinking about what you said, he began. You're right to be angry. The way you found out was terrible, and I take full responsibility. I set my purse down and regarded him coolly. Is Vanessa moving out of your company apartment? He blinked, surprised I knew about the downtown condo the company maintained for visiting executives. Now Vanessa's residence. That's complicated. She's vulnerable, and as the father of her child, I have responsibilities. Of course, I said neutrally. And your responsibilities to your wife of 12 years, the woman who helped build this company? That's not fair, he said, a flash of the real Ethan breaking through the remorseful mask. You contributed at the beginning, yes, but Summit's success is my vision, my leadership. I smiled thinly. Is that what you tell yourself to justify erasing me from the company narrative? Interesting revision of history. I've always acknowledged your support. Support, I cut him off. That's the word, isn't it? Support, not partnership, not co-founding, not investment. Just the wife who cheered from the sidelines while you did the real work. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration replacing contrition. What do you want from me? A public apology. More shares in the company. Just tell me so we can move past this. I want what I earned, I said simply. But right now I need space to think. I'll be staying at the Four Seasons for a few days. The Four Seasons? That's an unnecessary expense, he scoffed. I laughed, brittle even to my own ears. Your pregnant assistant is living in the company apartment I helped pay for. I think Summit can cover a hotel room for its most overlooked investor. I packed a suitcase with methodical precision, clothes professional, powerful but not flashy, nothing to tip him off. As I zipped the suitcase closed, Ethan leaned against the doorframe watching. The board meets next Friday to discuss the IPO timeline, he said casually. Your little hotel retreat will need to end by then. I need you presenting a united front. I smiled. How interesting that my presence suddenly matters when appearances are at stake. Don't be childish, Vanessa. The IPO represents everything we've worked for. Don't let personal issues interfere with business. Business is business, I said, wheeling my suitcase past him. I'll see you at the board meeting. The Four Seasons provided the perfect base for my counteroffensive. From my suite overlooking the Denver skyline, I coordinated with Daniel, gathered documentation, and prepared for lunch with Margaret Reynolds. Margaret chose an understated French bistro, far from tech circles. At 68, she remained imposing, silver hair cut in a precise bob, eyes missing nothing behind designer glasses. I wondered when you'd call, she said as I slid into the booth. Vanessa's announcement wasn't exactly subtle. You knew. Margaret snorted delicately. About the affair, yes. Ethan's got a pattern. Getting bored, seeking validation from younger admirers. The pregnancy announcement was unexpected, though sloppy. I studied her, the woman who'd navigated the male-dominated tech world decades before it was fashionable. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have believed me? Ethan's good at making anyone who questions him seem jealous or irrational, she replied. Besides, I learned long ago to let people discover hard truths themselves. It's the only way the lesson sticks. I nodded. Well, I've discovered mine. Now I need your help to make sure Ethan discovers his. Margaret smiled, sharp and approving. You'll need to address the Forrester contract. The what? Forrester Medical Systems. Summit's biggest client. 30% of annual revenue. Their renewal is next month. Ethan's been handling it personally, which is unusual. Usually, Christopher Barnes, VP of Sales and Ethan's closest ally, would manage accounts that size. You think something's wrong with the renewal? Margaret shrugged. It's convenient Ethan took control just before the IPO, right as his personal life became complicated. Worth investigating. I made a note to have Daniel look into it. Will you support a board motion to remove Ethan if there's cause? I've been waiting 3 years for someone to hold that man accountable, Margaret said firmly. You have my vote. And I can secure at least 2 others. That's 3 of 7, enough for a 2/3 majority. Hope surged. Don't thank me yet. Ethan won't go down quietly. He's got allies. Christopher will stand with him, and James Peterson will likely follow. That leaves Elizabeth Carter and Raj Patel. Elizabeth respects hard evidence and will do the right thing. Roger's trickier. He admires Ethan but is meticulous about governance. A demonstrable breach would concern him deeply. Margaret fixed me with a penetrating stare. Are you prepared for what comes after? Removing Ethan is just the first step. The company needs leadership during a critical transition. I'm ready. I've been preparing for 15 years. Margaret nodded. Then let's get to work. The morning after the board meeting, the summit headquarters hummed with cautious energy. The news of Ethan Carson's removal had spread overnight, dominating the morning headlines and financial feeds. The IPO timeline was officially pushed back, investors and analysts digesting the implications. I arrived early, choosing to walk through the floor rather than enter through the executive entrance. The familiar buzz of the engineering and product teams greeted me, hushed conversations, clattering keyboards, the quiet hum of creativity still alive despite the turmoil. Faces turned as I passed, some curious, others guarded. Ryan Hernandez, our chief technology officer, caught my eye and gave a subtle nod of support. Later, in the executive conference room, I gathered the core leadership team for an all-hands meeting. Diane, Daniel, Margaret, Raj, and Elizabeth were already there, their expressions a mix of determination and fatigue. "This is the moment we pivot from crisis to opportunity," I began. "The IPO delay is a setback, but it's also a chance to reset, to rebuild trust with our investors, our clients, and with ourselves." Margaret stepped forward, her calm voice cutting through the tension. "We've started drafting the revised financial projections based on accurate contracts and verified growth metrics. Diane's been instrumental in leading the audit." Diane nodded, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "The inflated forecasts Ethan, used have been corrected. The Forrester renewal is a continuation, not an expansion. We've adjusted the numbers to reflect realistic growth." Raj added, "Our investor relations team is preparing transparent communications to ensure clarity and regain confidence. Transparency is key." Daniel tapped his laptop. "The SEC has acknowledged our proactive disclosure favorably, but the investigation will be thorough. Cooperation will be our best defense." I looked around at the team. "This is going to be hard. Some will leave. Some investors will pull out. But I promise this, Summit will emerge stronger, not just financially but ethically." Over the next weeks, the company operated under heightened scrutiny. SEC interviews, auditor reviews, board sessions, all requiring relentless focus and steady nerves. Vanessa Cooper, surprisingly cooperative, had become an unexpected ally. Her candid testimony and documentation helped clarify the full extent of Ethan's misconduct. I arranged a private meeting with her one afternoon. She was softer now, quieter, her pregnancy apparent beneath her professional attire. "Thank you for stepping forward," I said sincerely. She looked up, eyes tired but resolute. "I want to do what's right, for the baby, for myself, and for Summit. It was never supposed to go this far." "I know," I replied. "What matters is what we do now." We agreed she would assist legal investigations fully and maintain distance from company operations. Public relations remained a delicate dance. Media coverage was relentless, some stories sympathetic, many critical. I leaned heavily on Margaret and Raj to craft messages that emphasized Summit's commitment to integrity and innovation, not just crisis management. The board appointed me interim CEO while a search for a permanent leader began. But I knew I was more than a placeholder. Summit needed vision grounded in reality, and I was ready to provide it. 6 months after the disclosure, I stood at the podium in the Denver Convention Center to address Summit's employees and investors. The banner behind me read, "Summit Technologies, Integrity, Innovation, Renewal." "Our journey has been challenging," I began, "but today marks not just a milestone in our IPO process, but a reaffirmation of our values. Transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership guide us forward." The stock had opened at $28 per share, modest compared to earlier projections, but steady, promising. Ethan Carson's departure was painful, but necessary. Summit's future is built on truth, not illusion. The applause was genuine, from a crowd that had endured uncertainty but still believed. Later, at the celebratory reception, Ryan raised a glass. "To the CEO who saved Summit from itself," he toasted. I smiled. It was never about one person. It was about all of us, reclaiming what Summit was always meant to be. Margaret joined, raising her own glass. "The real work starts now." I nodded, feeling the weight but also the power of that truth. Weeks later, Bill Turner from Forrester called. "Vanessa, congratulations on the IPO. The market's responding well to your leadership." "We owe much to honest partnerships," I replied. He chuckled. "You know, the expansion you once inherited as fiction? Now it's becoming reality, through trust and proven value." I savored the irony. That's the Summit way. As I settled into my new office, redesigned with warmth and openness, I glanced at the framed original business plan, the faded signatures a reminder of the past. Next to it hung the bell I rang at the stock exchange, a symbol of a new chapter. I had reclaimed my identity, my leadership, and my company. Ethan, had tried to humiliate me. Instead, he had set the stage for my greatest triumph. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time, it was truly mine to define. And this time, I would build something lasting. The months following the IPO were a whirlwind of rebuilding and renewal. Summit Technologies was no longer just a company. It was a statement, a beacon for what ethical leadership could achieve in an industry too often marred by ego and deception. Internally, the culture began to shift. The shadow of Ethan Carson's tenure lingered, but it no longer defined us. Employees felt heard, recognized, and valued. Credit was shared openly, ideas celebrated, and collaboration encouraged. I made sure of that. One afternoon, as I walked through the open office, Ryan caught my eye and smiled. "You've changed this place," he said quietly. I nodded, feeling a surge of pride. We changed it together. The legal and regulatory storms calmed with time. Ethan accepted a plea deal on securities fraud charges, 2 years in a minimum security facility and restitution payments. The once revered tech visionary was now a cautionary tale in business ethics seminars. Christopher Barnes resigned from the board amid pressure and mounting evidence of his complicity. His departure cleared the way for fresh perspectives and new leadership committed to transparency. A year after that fateful anniversary dinner, I stood once again at the Denver Convention Center, this time for Summit's official IPO ceremony. The banner behind me proudly proclaimed the company's new ethos: integrity, innovation, authenticity. Our valuation may be more modest than once hoped, I told the crowd, but it's real, sustainable, and built on trust. The bell rang, sharp and clear, signaling not just a financial milestone but a rebirth. Margaret sat in the front row, her approving nod steady as ever. She had been my steadfast ally through every challenge, guiding me when the path was darkest. Later at the reception, Vanessa Cooper arrived, not as a shadow of past betrayals but as a quiet testament to complex human stories intertwined with Summit's evolution. She caught my eye and smiled faintly. We shared a brief moment of mutual understanding. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but acknowledgement of the past and hope for the future. My phone buzzed, a message from Bill Turner at Forrester. "Vanessa, the expansion we once only dreamed of? It's finally happening. Real growth, real partnerships." I typed back, savoring the irony. The Summit way, built on truth and trust. As I returned to my office, the space felt different. The cold remnants of Ethan's era were gone, replaced by warmth, openness, and purpose. The framed original business plan with our signatures remained, a reminder of what had been, and what had been reclaimed. Beside it, the bell symbolized the future we were building. I had lost much but gained more: the truth, my voice, and the company I had helped create. The journey had been painful, but the destination was worth every step. Summit was no longer just Ethan's dream or my husband's legacy. It was mine. And together, we would build a horizon bright with promise.